It's June 7th, 2026. Welcome back to Ronin Dojo. I'm Himitsu. This is my partner, Kasei-jin. If this is your first time here, hajime mashite. Otherwise, yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Today we're going to talk about one of the concepts that we use here in Ronin Dojo in the simplification of the martial art. As I've explained in another video, our purpose isn't to create this huge encyclopedic volume of a collection of just stuff, of techniques without context. And so when we teach and when we break things down, we talk about three basic strikes and we talk about three basic blocks. Everything else is a derivative thereof. If you start looking at attacks and combination attacks from all kinds of different lines, they're just variations of these three different things, and I'm going to show you. So, the three basic attacks that we use here are the ubiquitous round punch, and again, pursuant to another video, I'm here on the inside of my opponent's line. This is what we call the inside line. So we have the ubiquitous round punch. We would have this ryote munedori, or this two-handed collar grab, which from the classic Jujutsu, the way that my teacher taught it to me, is kind of this Frankenstein-like long choke. This being much more relevant in real world. And then we have this two-handed wrist grab, this ryote kotedori, right? And this would be, this could come from a disarm if I had a blade, if he was trying to disarm me, if he was trying to hold my blade. It could also be that I would be trying to disarm him. There's really not a lot of difference here, right? So these are our three basic attacks. And every technique that we do, let's try a demonstration with ogoshi, nice simple throw. So here, my partner is going to attack me with the ubiquitous round throw. I step in with my block. I step in to make ogoshi, and using my drawing hand, I allow Uke's energy to continue forward to finish the throw. This same throw now from munedori. His energy is static. I need to break that line of energy, cut through, and I complete my ogoshi from the chest grab. And lastly, from the wrist grab, we now have distance to soften the line. I counterattack. I step in. His energy is still here, and I draw that through. He tried to snorkel me there. And I finish my throw. So these are our three basic attacks. And every technique that we do should be able to conform to these three basic attacks. Now, are these the only basic attacks? No. So let's say Kasei-jin decides to throw a straight punch. This is going to put me on the outside line. That's something we're going to discuss in another lesson. Right now we're simply talking about these inside line attacks. If he grabs me with one hand by the collar, and he decides he's going to start feeding me punches with the other hand, this is still just a combination of two basic attacks. He could be doing this here and feeding me. He could have a classic judo grip on my tricep. Oh. This is simply another combination of the chest grab and the wrist grab, or the arm grab. It's just another combination. If he comes at me with that high shomenuchi etemi, right? It really just is. We're still on the inside line here. It's just another inside line attack. It's really no different than the round punch, save for the line of energy. Right? So again, these are our three basic entries. There are three basic blocks. Everything else becomes a derivative thereof. And again, we're not talking about working off the outside line yet. We're still talking about the inside line. And these three basic blocks all are dependent on where my opponent's center is relative to mine and where my foot position is. So if my opponent throws the ubiquitous round punch and my left foot is forward, I'm making an S block. S. There's an S block in everything. The S block exists everywhere. It's like air. And so that S block is about allowing me to vector my opponent's energy in the line that he's delivering it. And it comes from the fact that my elbows and my knees, we say our elbows and our knees are connected, or our shoulders and our hips are connected. And I'm going to demonstrate in 1 second. Let's say my right foot is forward relative to my opponent's center, and he throws that round punch. If I throw just the S block, that leaves this hand on vacation, and he's going to come through the other way, or he's just going to bowl through and he's just going to push my center over. And so I'm going to counterattack, and this is what we would call a double cross block. In karate, we might see something like this, but this is not very this is not very yielding, this is absorbing. And so we have to understand that the block is the first step to the counterattack. In my S block, I'm not just blocking this and keeping it here. Again, this is vectoring, but at the same time, I'm using this shuto here to separate the biceps. So as he punches, oh, right? It's a good thing he's young and heals fast. So in my double cross block, I'm not just simply absorbing sort of where the delivery system is and where the energy for the delivery system is coming. But I'm going to use this to counterattack the brachial plexus. So as he steps in, I'm here, I'm breaking his center. I'm still blocking from the attack whatever here is in the delivery system at the end of the delivery system, but I'm also breaking his energy by coming in with my center and attacking that center. At the same time, if I hit him in the brachial plexus hard enough, I'm going to dummy him and he's going to drop. The third basic block is what we call the Kempo block. This comes from my teacher in England who very much described his Jujutsu as Kempo Jujutsu. But if we think that we're more square, and it's not dependent, we can do this from one side as well. But if we're in very close proxemics, let's say we're in a bar and he decides he's going to come up and chest bump me, and the idea of he's starting to monkey dance with me, that my first reaction is to go into what we call an oh shit pose. Right? And so as he's like, oh, I'm a big bad guy, I'm going, oh shit, and I start to cover up. My hands go up to cover up my head. I begin to tuck down to protect my organs and to base out so that if I'm tall and I'm weak and he decides to walk through me, he's going to push me over. And so what I do is I consolidate my center in my oh shit pose as he punches, and I'm blocking myself. And at the same time, that counterattack, I want to drive that elbow here into his labrum, into his chest, and I want to start breaking his center. So if he decides to come at me, that's my Kempo block. And so we have three basic blocks relative to where our foot position is. One thing I said I would bring up, here my left foot is forward, my opponent attacks me with his right hand. This becomes an S block. This hand hasn't engaged yet. When I come in for the counterattack, when that leg and that arm come in, I'm going to strike, punch, engage for throw. What I cannot do is I cannot throw a double cross block from this position, because if I do, I've now crossed center, pushed through, and I have no balance. So one of our principles is that no matter where we are, we're not crossing center. That our hara, our center line relative to each other, has to be square. As soon as we throw a kink in the line, we choke off our own energy, we choke off our own balance, and that we become imbalanced. One more time. Actually, sorry. Go ahead. Mean it. So I cannot cross center. It is better for me to engage an S block with one hand, mean it, from this position.
Oh, man.
Than it is to throw a bad block with no balance. Mean it, come on. Where I have no balance. Okay, so again, from a nomenclatural standpoint, as we work into bigger lessons and we talk about more advanced techniques, we're going to see these three basic attacks and these three basic blocks and these basic lines of entry. And that is going to become foundational for understanding what it is we're doing and why it is that we're doing it, because it's not just a random bunch of moves that you put your left foot in, you take your left foot out, and you shake it all about, because so much bad jiu-jitsu, bad martial arts across the board have become this random collection of moves. And you can gauge this for yourself. Go to YouTube. Look at teachers that are teaching that the line doesn't mean anything, that that when you start to see random things with random lines and without there being larger conceptual connection about what is this movement, what does it represent, if this is truly, and for us specifically, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, if these concepts don't exist, I'm going to suggest to you that somewhere in the lineage of whatever it is that you're seeing, something's been lost. Just think of it this way. If you have a lineage of, let's say, 100 years or 200 years or 400 years, no matter how long some people want to claim the lineage of their art is, and you have one bad teacher that misses one thing, one foundational building block, and it gets lost over generation after generation after generation. And I really believe, personally, that the critical thinking of what's happened in all martial arts, Jiu-Jitsu not the least of all, but certainly in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, is that we've forgotten about what this is. There's been so many modern interpretations of what things could be or should be, and certainly the Edo period, the 264 years of peace that was the Edo period, from which we see the evolution of the dojo culture about self-defense being taught by non-warriors, that things were lost. And so my most respectful submission is that all we're trying to do here, the only thing that we're trying to do that's different, or Jiu-Jitsu may not be better or worse or different than anybody else's. We're certainly teaching concepts from the Judo syllabus and the Aikido syllabus and reconciling the idea of the Ju schools versus the Aiki schools, this schism back to what is the parent Jiu-Jitsu. And that's something for another lesson. But all we're trying to come up with that, if this is, as my teacher taught it to me, either battlefield, meaning pre-Battle of Sekigahara, pre-1603, or Taiho, the less lethal jiu-jitsu, the Aiki styles, the wrist locks and things that we see, largely developed through the Edo period, but with some evidence that goes back to the mid-1500s, to the Osaka Police Department of the 16th century, that trying to reconcile of what these things must be, if this is Japanese and if it is period correct, relative to armor and armament, and the ideology of the government of the day, whether it was about warfare or peace, then they must be certain things. They must be specific to what they are. And so we try to simplify and derive and base things on concepts. And these core concepts are the things that make sense, that where there is a conflict in the concept and the outcome, that there's a conflict in the assumption. And where there's a conflict in the assumption, imagine this, just for one more quick lesson. If my opponent was to throw the right punch to me, and I was to throw a block that was ineffective to this attack, and I say, whoa, stop. I need for you to throw the other hand because I only learned how to block because this block only works with the other hand, that wouldn't be very effective. And so when we see techniques that work here well but don't work in other places, we really have to question it. Today in class, we were talking about the judo technique of osotogari. And when we look at the gari techniques in the judo syllabus, we have osotogari, kosotogari, ouchigari, ko-uchigari, major and minor, inner and outer leg reaps. Osotogari we like. It's a very powerful throw. Kosoto, ouchi, ko-uchi are cause us to be very, Musashi, the Dojo Malinois, has decided to get involved in the technique. When we have other techniques like ouchi, ko-uchi, kosoto, it causes us to be very tied up with our opponent. Okay, so if this is my osotogari, this would be my kosotogari, my minor outer reaping throw. And because my leg is now trapped up in his, if I'm going to take him over and he falls with my leg tied up in him, from a judo standpoint, this is fine because we've got rules and we've got safety and we've got padded mats, and then my knee is not going to likely get hurt if I fall on the padded mats. And as soon as I score my ippon, the round is over and I win. But if this is jiu-jitsu, if this is battlefield and we're fighting with knives in our hands, let's say I've got a knife and he's holding onto my wrist and he's got a knife and I come in with this ko-uchigari and we fall down and now we're rolling on the ground together, each armed with a knife. This is not particularly productive. So we can see this as an advent of sport judo, something that was invented during the Edo period through the period of peace, and is something that is sport combat. But from the idea of battlefield jujitsu, Kosotogeri might not have a very practical application. My opinion, have yours, that's fine, you do you, I'll do me. But again, if we're looking for what, as my teacher left us with the enigma of what is battlefield jujitsu, what is Taiho jujitsu, then it is up to us, and I invite every martial artist who might see this, to give you the permission to think this as well, that it is up to us to think critically of what this is and what this isn't. And don't just surrender your agency to the fact that some guy in a street corner dojo who's got a black belt, or maybe even one of the more fancy polka dot ones, knows what he's talking about if the concepts of the technique are not sound to what the philosophy should be. Philosophy is the structural architecture of everything that we do in life. And it should be no less so, more so in the dojo. So with that said, thank you very much for your time. Arigatou gozaimasu. Arigatou gozaimasu.